This is Glenn DeAndrews. This is Glenn's Word. Formerly had another page. It was called Heroes and Kings. I still have Heroes and Kings apparel. The podcast page on Spotify, iTunes, and all the other podcast platforms. I've changed that over to Glenn's Word. And I'll tell you a little bit about how that came about. Those who know me here in Atlanta, Georgia, across the country, grew up in Southern California during the early 80s, early 70s, but became an adult at that time. Athlete, but knew all the guys in the streets, and through God's plan, I should say, and family and friends. My best buddy in the world, he got married here, picked up the Morehouse application. I was on my way to another university, a couple of other universities, because I was playing baseball and football, and very good, above average, being recruited for both sports. And the teams were looking at me when I was in the 10th grade, so they were just kind of watching what I was doing, 10th grade, 11th grade. But I didn't play football in senior year because I got hurt due to a neck injury. Anyway, end up coming to Morehouse, getting an MBA, getting a Six Sigma, getting married, be married, 23, 20, it'll be 26 years this year. 2 kids, one son at the University of Oregon. My daughter just graduated from Arizona State. Wife, she's in the banking industry. I used to be in the banking industry and was one time in supply chain logistics. And while I was doing both of those and transitioning out of corporate America, met a brother named Hotep, Akhenaten to be exact. And me and him would have discussions about what's going on in the African American community, what's going on with education, because that was his field, education. And he was once into rap and doing some other entrepreneurial things as well. But we would just have these deep conversations in grad school, as well as the kind of debates we would have in class with individuals who look like us, individuals who didn't look like us, and realized me and him kind of saw the world the same way. But the difference was, this about 15 years ago, he was married, his wife was an attorney. I was married and had my kids. He didn't have his kids yet. And we would just talk about everything that's taking place right now, 2023. We talked about it about 15, 16 years ago. And the main themes that stood out with him and Captain Townsend, who was a retired military brother as well, we talked about the relationships between us and our wives and what was going on between black men and black women. We were observing this dynamic of young boys wanting to be more feminine. We were observing how young ladies were taking on a lot of masculine energy. And this was just things we observed in our community, watching the news, watching the propaganda, watching everything that's just going on. Social media at the time was just getting going. I mean, it was going, but it was just speeding up. I don't know if Google and YouTube and Facebook had connected each other, Twitter, all the other platforms that's been out now, 2023. But our conversations, what I would learn from him is, yes, there are things in this world, but as black men, as descendants of Alkebulans, we keep pushing. We keep pushing. Know the enemy is out there. Know they are trying to block. Know that there are traps out there, but you keep mushing. From me, he saw And then I may get him in here one day, and we'll have that conversation of what we talked about. In me, he saw what he was talking about. As a dad, as a married man who respect the institution of marriage, who in fantastic shape, because around that time I was late 40s. I'll be 60 this year. I was born in 1963. So I've seen about 3 or 4 generations of human beings. And the one thing that stood out, and I remember to this day, as we were having this debate in the class talking about community responsibility, how classism work, how racism work, how capitalism work, and that me and him we both come from that Marcus Garvey thought process, but at the same time understanding this capitalism in the United States. The other thing was self-control, and I'm just going to be blunt, discipline. To clean it up is the ability to not let your world be dictated by your sexual desires, but more to be discerning and intentional from an intellectual standpoint and from your heart. I learned this early on. Could not format it and put it into a process, but it was how I was operating in this world. Because reading the Jet magazines, reading Ebony, reading Francis Cress Wesseling, Dr. Francis Cress Wesseling, reading E. Franklin Frazier, Alex Haley's Roots, reading Malcolm X, as well as reading Shakespeare, Edgar Allan Poe, Voltaire, Machiavelli, the encyclopedia from A to Z. By the time I was 8 years old, all the way to 10, there used to be next door-to-door salesman who would sell the encyclopedia. So I'm a book reader, and I've been reading all this stuff. Sigmund Freud, Abraham Maslow, Charles Darwin, Lamarck. So as I'm having these experiences, growing up around the guys in the gangs, growing up around individuals who was in the drug gang, I did neither. Never was a gang member, never dealt drugs, don't smoke, don't drink. Bringing it forward to that conversation with Hotep, how we move as black men, particularly black men with responsibilities, particularly black men who other men, other human beings, other people watch us. Understanding that the first human beings on this planet, and probably from another universe, scientifically proven, had melanin and dominant traits. That doesn't mean you're bigger, better, smarter, or greater than the next person, because you still got to put in that work. That means you are made in God's image, and you are the best of what this universe can create. Knowing that every second, every minute, every hour, you have to move in a certain kind of way. Know the history of slavery. Know the history of what took place between the European nations, the colonies, knowing what took place in Africa, knowing about some of these investment banking firms and these insurance companies who partaked in the trafficking, in the slave kidnapping, the inhumanity, the brutality. I've been on cruise ships. in the Atlantic. It never gets past me. We're talking about individuals in the bottom of a ship. We're talking about individuals from different tribes. I know some African brothers to this day from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Egypt, from South Africa. And we have the greatest discussions. And so with those conversations with Hotep and how I move and how I've done things over the last 60 years, and really what I can say the last 52 years, because I can just about remember everything exact and precise since the time I was about 7 or 8 years old. And again, I'll tell you, I'll be 60 this year. One of the main themes that stood out, and that was before all this conversation about who's a Sigma, who's I think a simp, who's alpha, who's beta, which I probably those kind of titles and conversations were popping up 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago. The one thing I had that conversation with Hotep was that to be an alpha male is to be in control. To be in control, to not be loud, to move quietly, but carry a big stick. That there are no sacrifices, there are decisions. And as a married man, as an individual who handshake, eye contact, and words mean everything, that you honor your word, behind that is, as a human being, understanding the Maslow hierarchy of needs and self-actualization. You're trying to be the best you can be. It's already in the DNA. It's already in the genetics. And every time I see Brother Akhenaten, and he has 2 boys now, and he's really doing this thing big with a father initiative. Proud of him, like it. I'm busy with a lot of stuff that I'm doing because I'm now a personal trainer, run a gym, train professional athletes, non-athletes. I'm getting ready to get into more health coaching and lifestyle coaching because that, as I'm getting older, gives me a chance to reach men and as well as women as well. Because one of the things I do in running my facility is having conversations with folks, just like I had that conversation with Hotep. And the one thing I know the gods have blessed me with is the ability to communicate. Not that good in English, but I published some books just to challenge myself, understanding the structure of the English language as it is written. But definitely can speak, definitely can talk, definitely have Proverbs 30:32, have that good word that brings grace and gratitude and optimism to anyone who comes within my vibration and frequency. That is why I changed the title from Heroes and Kings to Glenn's Words, because that's what it's been. That's what it's been for 52 years of family, friends, strangers, and anyone who come near me or contact me or communicate to me what they're going to get from me. I recognize I don't have much time. I'm 60 years old. There's birth, there's dash, and then there's the having that conversation with the higher powers. And in this time with my kids, I have conversations with them every day. My wife, my mom and dad is still alive. I have conversations with them. trying to balance the, I hate the word value put on human beings because it's ancestral. And I have a problem with that because I'm connected to the ancestors. I don't watch much TV. And about 15, 20 years ago, I stopped watching TV because as a trainer, I understand that what you drink, what you eat, your nutrition has an effect on your body. What you watch on these screens, what you read, the people you're around, that type of nutrition has an effect on your heart, soul, and your intellectual capability. You got to clean that up. It's been said in many different ways. Your net worth is based on your network. Les Brown had something he said, and I read a long time ago on when I did watch TV. He was on PBS, and he talked about the toxic people, the toxic individuals, and that can be family and friends. And I remember that. That's one of the things with Les Brown before this big thing with courses and speakers was real big. As a matter of fact, I think that even his was on videotape. But I remember watching him on PBS talk about toxic people. And I remember that. And that's one of those little things I've kept with me where I don't go in spaces where I'm not welcome. I don't stay in spaces where I can feel the energy changing in a negative way, because I've been in drive-by shootings. I've been at the park in Cali when folks start shooting. I've been in nightclubs and house parties when folks start fighting. I know what that vibe feel like. I know how to move quickly. I know how to move accordingly. I will disclose this. I've always had a Mossberg pistol grip with me since I was 16. Luckily, I never had to pull it out. One other thing about the slave trade. I've heard individuals in the last 20 years, particularly some young folks, a generation or two generations younger than me, talk about racism don't exist. And this is black folks. And I would look at them and feel sorry for them. Really feel sorry for them. Because where you think you are and not thinking racism exists, imagine if racism did not exist and where you could be. And that can go in two directions. You could either be a lot greater or you can be a lot worse. Racism is in the fabric of the United States. But not only does racism affect black folks, it affects white folks as well. It affects Hispanic folks. It affects Asian folks. It affects Jewish folks. It affects the Islamic community. It affects everybody. Because racism is like rain. And when those dark clouds come over, everybody gets wet. How I crack the code in understanding the traps of racism is understanding, like rain, you don't let it stop you. If it's somewhere you got to go, you get your umbrella, throw on some galoshes, put you on a rain jacket, but don't be in denial. Racism do exist. As I stand or sit right here with my intellect and how bright and smart I am, I can only imagine if I didn't look like this. Tony Yayo, So Seductive. LSU. Ladies Championship. My resume. Change it from Morehouse to University of Georgia. I was intentional the way I named my kids, because I know what the game is, and I cracked the code. And there's one little piece that I've been trying to solve, And solving the last piece will give me my financial freedom. Because I didn't recognize early on that I wasn't free. So that part with Hotep, how alphas move, is about control, discipline, understanding decisionality, understanding intentionality, understanding being under control, self-control at all times, even at the worst times, to slow things down and be quiet and observe. It's almost like being not in the third dimension or the fourth dimension, but observing and living in the fifth dimension. Almost like having an out-of-body experience. But that's how you gotta move. So getting back to not watching TV, no TV, decided I needed to be fed what I wanted to be fed with. So I started watching YouTube. And at that time, picked up on Dr. Eric Thomas. Love his stuff. The Secret of Success podcast. He was doing what up. It's your boy. Love that stuff. Because I was already getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning because my son's on the West Coast and he would get in at 1 in the morning and we would have conversations in the morning before I would train folks and before I would get going with my day. So I was already up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Still do to this day. So big thanks to Dr. Thomas, Jamal King. I forget the other two brothers that's on his panel in their podcast. I've been watching those gentlemen for the last 4 or 5 years, even prior to the pandemic. Caught a little Kwame Brown when that all started because I was during the pandemic. I had just finished hiking Mount Rainier. We were out in the desert because we got out. Double meaning. We got out. Get out. Then I come across this stuff called the manosphere and the roommates. Anthony O'Neill, formerly with Dave Ramsey. Like that brother. He's from San Diego. I'm from San Diego. One day we may cross paths and have a conversation. A positive conversation, a good conversation. Young brother, seeing how he's moved, me being going to get ready to turn 60, and just have a conversation, understanding someone who grew up in Southern California, especially Oceanside, if I remember correctly, because that's a whole different perspective and observation to have coming from Southern California, and me now being here in Georgia, and I want to say he's in the DMV now. I've seen Valuetainment, Andrew Tate and that whole situation. The Lapeef Network. And Kevin Samuels. I saw his transition. Rest in peace. And a lot of this stuff, MTR, I would get from my son. My son, he's in the health and wellness in fantastic shape, and he would send stuff to me like, "Dad, what you think about this?" Because I think for the most part, I'm older than mainly everybody on these platforms. Courtney Michelle. Caught the Lapeef Network in the beginning, and I like that brother after he got that full beard. Beards choose us. We don't choose the beard. Then the situation with this young lady who decided to have a particular person on her platform. And I've been watching from afar. And some individuals defending Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. I'm only doing this and have done everything I've ever done. One, to pay my bills. One, my existence. One, because I just like to create. One, because I'm going to do this just to do it. From fitness to having an apparel company, because I have an entrepreneurial spirit. But the bigger, higher calling is that one day I won't be here, and what am I leaving for my kids and other young folks like my kids? And so I watch some of you clowns, and you are clowns. And something I've heard and seen is that some folks don't cam up. They don't come on so you can see them, which I find that kind of strange. You can see me. My name is Glenn D. Andrews with 2 N's. Glenn D. Andrews. Google my name. Everything will pull up. Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. That's what I see. I see folks winning short term, probably making 5, 6, 7 figures using the dysfunction and misstep of the African American or Black community. And it's in all communities, because I've had a chance to travel around this world. Where I live, there's trailer parks that's not too far from me. And most of those folks don't even look like me. So there is a classism about this. The one good thing I do is I listen. I peep game quick. There's a particular animal called a raccoon. I see a lot of that in some of these human beings. There's also what I call the snitch and the snake. And I see a lot of that. I see a bunch of house Negroes scrambling for crumbs with no dignity. And hopefully, most of you are not parents, but I think a few of you are. There's a couple of in particular. Call yourself a Christian. But the words that are coming out of your mouth is always punching down. See, I've never punched down. I've always given a hand up. As broke as I am, I'm always donating whatever I have. I pass by a spot where I see veterans, which bothers the hell out of me. See veterans with a sign, and I'll give up my lunch that day. I always got, some of my apparel and merch. I'll give that up. You will see some homeless folks with my gear. And I had another line called the Life Doctrines, real thick hoodies. Passed out a bunch of boxes of that, but that's neither here nor there. There's a couple individuals I've noticed on these platforms. They're doing a lot of this, and they got a bunch of followers. And it reminds me of a quote that Marcus Garvey had. And I'm paraphrasing. It's literally the quote where he talks about going back to Africa, and a lot of the individuals who are no good here will be no good there. Say that again. A lot of these individuals who are no good here will be no good there. Paraphrasing Marcus Garvey. So I'm cammed up. This is Glenn's words. Talk to my enemies. Talk to my friends. Talk to my family. Talk to my neighbors. Talk to the folks of all the gyms I ran. Talk to my clients I have trained. I got folks in Major League Baseball and the NFL. Go read my books. You can go Amazon Central, type in Glenn D. Andrews, author. I have no problem admitting I was wrong or made a mistake. That is possible. I'm not perfect. I'm striving for perfection, though. I'm like artificial intelligence. I'm constantly trying to learn, constantly adapting, constantly evolving. Because if you're not understanding Charles Darwin, you don't evolve, and or adapt and get stronger, bigger, faster, smarter, you'll become extinct and you'll die. And I see a lot of individuals kind of use that and manipulate that. And punch down with that. And use adapting into the American culture as the way you should be. These are Glenn's words. And what I can tell you, get this light back on. What I can tell you is what just happened with the Pearly things and this exposure of all these different individuals and the hit dogs screaming and yelling is fantastic, because in the history of this world and these chapters that concern the Akabulan or African community, the African American community, and all the melanin folks around the world, these are just chapters and sentences in that larger book. So what I consider this is great exposure of those who are for you or against you. And like Marcus Garvey said, those who are no good here will be no good anywhere else in this planet or universe. And understanding toxic people, like Les Brown pointed out, what you must do is not take out a butter knife, not take out a switchblade, not even do it with a samurai sword, katana. You must do it with a scalpel, a surgeon's scalpel. The cut of the individuals in our community who have melanin, who mean us no well, mean us no good. There are liabilities, and all they do is punch down. They need to be cut and removed. I don't get into the whole idea of being canceled. I don't even get that. I can't be canceled. I shut all this stuff down, and I'm going to still be doing what I've been doing. Because I was doing it before, I've been doing it during, and I'm doing it after. But as a responsibility to my kids, my wife, my family, my community, my clients, the ancestors, I owe them. I owe them for their dignity, their strength, their tears. These pretty things have exposed the frauds, the punks who have no solution. They're on welfare. They're getting a check and ain't doing nothing. They're not even representing us in the best way. While the larger community are entertained. So this will be the last time I speak on this. We need to talk. Young brother named Alan. Love your stuff, bro. Love, 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 love. Love what you're saying. My email is glendandrews1@gmail.com. I see what you're doing. Don't give up. And let me tell you something else too. There are a lot of older brothers like me. Most of my friends, they don't do YouTube or on social media. They've either retired, getting ready to retire, raising kids, grandkids. They live in life. They're just doing their thing. Most of my friends are married, as a matter of fact. But I do know some younger guys in 2 generations younger than me that are not married. Some of them black, some of them white, some of them Asian, some of them Jewish, some of them Indian, some of them Pakistani, some of them African. Because I'm that G. And I'm cammed up. So yeah. There's a particular take on one of Ice Cube's. I don't know if it was Death Certificate or America's Most Wanted. Fuad Muhammad. In order for there to be some peacemakers, there got to be some peace breakers. I think that's what it is. I don't want to misquote that, but I'll have it ready next time. Love me some Ice Cube. You know, I'm from Southern California. That's how I roll. Love hip hop. A lot of folks want to blame hip hop for our problems. Nah, I came up at the beginning of hip hop. I saw what was going on in the schools, how they was pulling out music, and that's another story. We won't go down there. These are Glenn's words. I went all over the place with this, which is good, because I can tell you, I'm very well read. From 8 years old to 10 years old, I read the encyclopedia from A to Z. Valedictorian, Cornell Elementary School, graduated with honors, Morehouse, and South University MBA. Got a Lean Green Six Sigma Green Belt from Emory. I've published about 18 books. A couple of them are journals that I did with my kids. Some of them about fitness, the other about the black boy and the black man in America. Got an apparel store, Heroes and Kings. Got the Heroes and Kings podcast. Now is Glenn's Word on Spotify. And I got this YouTube channel. Oh, and I'm a general manager of a fitness facility and train folks. So I don't have to watch what I say. I'll say that again. I don't have to watch what I say. I'm a grown man. This is Glenn's words. Until next time.